YouTube at the same time. So we're going to see how this works. So never tried doing live on both, but very excited to see who's going to come and join us. I see folks already pouring in on Instagram. AK Morehouse, you are the first contestant on this, and we'll see how YouTube works. So YouTube, come with me, join me. We're going to start doing these Window Wednesdays in both places, because I know there's a lot of you folks that will see me do Window Wednesday and only knew it was on Instagram, or some of you on YouTube had no clue that this was even a thing that we did, where on Wednesdays we come together and I get to chat with you about everything window related. You know, what do we need to learn this week on restoring windows, fixing up old windows. And y'all know that this is probably my favorite topic in the world, is talking about old windows. So today we're going to talk about old windows, and we're going to talk about, well, we're going to talk about paint in particular. So very excited to be jumping on this. This is a topic that I am very familiar with. I love painting. I love talking about paint. There's a lot of questions that I get on paint too. If you are here on the live feed, don't forget, please give me your questions. Post them in the comments. I've got some questions from earlier folks that had chimed in on Instagram, and I'll be going through those questions as well at the end of this. But we are going to be talking about paint, specifically latex paint, oil paint. So the big question I wanted to answer today in this was, can you paint latex over top of oil paint? And this seems to be like the battle du jour. I've been hearing all about it, so I was like, I'm writing a post for it on my blog, so please go check that out, thecraftsmanblog.com. And I wanted to do a live on this because this topic totally applies to old windows and old doors. So I've got old doors behind me because we're working on a couple of these right now, and I've got one that is painted with oil and one that's painted with latex. We're refinishing these. We're not doing like a full strip down or anything. So even my crew is asking me, they're like, well, what do we need to do before before they're ready for paint? Because we usually strip everything to bare wood and they know exactly what to do. In this case, we're doing stuff a little bit differently, and we're just basically repainting them, but doing a really fancy schmancy restoration paint job, right? We're doing something that's going to look and last for years and years. So, can you paint latex over top of oil? You tell me. Answer is no, but there's a way to do it. So you can't come through. I've got an oil door here. This is oil-based paint on here. I cannot just come through without doing anything to it and put a fresh coat of latex paint on there, or 2 coats or 3 coats or whatever, however many coats you want to do. You need to do something first. Now this one is latex. Can I just come through and put a coat of latex paint on here? Yes, I can. No prep needed. Obviously, the first thing you want to do before you paint anything is clean it very well. If you clean your windows or doors or woodwork or whatever it is you're painting, we're focused on Window Wednesdays on windows themselves, then if you give it a good cleaning, and you can put oil paint on top of oil, you can put latex paint on top of latex. Not a problem at all, as long as it's clean. If you try and paint over top of dirt or over top of oils, even like on a door, you know, people will be around here where the hardware was, people are going to be putting their hands around it or anything, and you're going to get oils on top of it. You want to clean it, scrub it really good with a TSP type cleaner. That's going to work best. And once you've done that, you're ready for a fresh coat of paint. But if you're going to change from oil to latex, then you need to do something first, because if you do just paint latex paint on top of oil paint, you will get very quick failure. And I've seen a lot of doors come through this shop where we have to strip the whole door down because that latex paint is just sheeting off. It doesn't grab on to oil paints. The oil paint has a very smooth surface. They're great for doors and windows. And if you don't do anything about that super smooth surface, nothing's going to stick to it other than another oil paint. So if you try and put latex on top, you're going to have failure. How do you avoid the failure? Good question. Thank you, Instagram and YouTube, for asking that. The quickest way to avoid the failure, there's 3 ways that you can prep a window, door, wall, anything that's painted with oil paint, and make it ready to accept latex paint if you want to switch over to that. Number 1, I've got a sample gallon of it here. This is something we use. This is a Sherwin-Williams Fast Dry Oil Primer, but it's an oil-based stain blocking primer. Stain blocking, great. Not necessary in this case, but you need an oil-based primer. You can put an oil-based primer on top of just about anything. You can put it over top of latex, you can put it over top of oil, you can put it over top of most coatings. It's a really excellent paint, and it's very good at prepping a surface for whatever you want to do after that. The great thing about priming with oil-based is that once you prime with oil-based, you can top coat with oil or you can top coat with latex. Totally your choice. But you have to prime with that oil-based. If I came through and primed this oil-based paint door and with a latex primer, I may or may not get the results I want. If it's just a standard multi-purpose latex, I'm probably not going to get good results. You might luck out with like a bonding primer or something like that. But if you just come through with a standard, inexpensive, fast dry, oil-based primer, you're going to be good to go. Now the reason I'm not using some of those long oils or the exterior wood primers is because I know it's a wood door, but I'm not priming wood on here. I'm actually priming paint. Yes, I might have a few surfaces, a few little spots where there's bare wood, but I don't need something that's going to really soak into the wood and penetrate, because it's not soaking anywhere. It's just laying on the surface of this paint, and that's really the ultimate option that you need here. Is just a fast dry is going to be totally fine. You don't need something more, 8-hour dry time, 24-hour dry time. You don't need those in this case if you're priming a previously painted surface. So come through with an oil-based primer. That's number one that you can do to paint latex on top of oil. Number two that you can do to paint latex on top of oil, you can do what we did here, is we came through and sanded all of this. I sanded every little inch of this, every spot. You may see some darker spots on here. That means it didn't get sanded as much in there because maybe they were a little recessed. Maybe there's some holidays, you can see a little bit if you look at it closely that there are some of the grain is in there because there's high spots and low spots in the paint coating. And so I've come through to sand this, and this is going to give me, I did this in this case because I wanted to have a smoother door when I paint it. But I don't have to prime this if I don't want to, if I sand every little bit of it. The challenge with that is you can see on this door, like I've got panels. So I've got to sand in each one of these like intricate little profiles, and I just don't trust myself that I'm going to get into each one of those. If you've just got like a totally flat surface on a window, door, baseboard, molding, anything like that, and it's got oil paint on it, and you just want to come through and sand it, I would say probably 120, 180, 220. I wouldn't go any finer than 220. But if you use one of those grits there, you will get the surface that you want, and you're going to get something nice and smooth and ready for paint as well. You won't have to prime as long as you, again, clean it after the sanding. But I prefer to sand this, get it nice and smooth. You see these little like white spots on here in places. Those were all high spots that I've resolved, and now I'm going to prime it. I'll sand it again with like a sanding sponge, and then I'll come back and I can top coat it with latex or oil, whatever I want to do. But sanding is the number two option that you can do. So priming number one with an oil-based, only oil-based. Sanding number two, or number three, which I don't use often, but you can use a liquid deglosser. So most paint companies make these. You can find them just about anywhere. And a liquid deglosser you apply kind of like your Daniel-san on the Karate Kid, right? You need to wax the floor. You're going to buff it into the surface. So I'm coming through here. I just grab one of these rags right here. I'm going to pour the deglosser onto here, and then I'm going to come through and buff it onto here, kind of really scrub it into the surface and make sure I've covered everything and just let it dry. You don't have to put it on with a brush. It's actually best to go on with a rag and kind of rub it into the surface. Unlike wax, just like waxing a car, except you don't have to buff it off later. You just let it dry. Once it dries, it creates a rougher surface that is going to result in something that can take a latex paint. Again, don't skip an area. Make sure that you cover everything on there. If you hit just one little spot, if you miss like one little spot, if I don't get into these profiles here very well, I'm going to have paint failure right there. And I see that a lot from either shoddy paint work or shoddy priming or not good sanding or whatever. So the foolproof way, we talk about the three options. The third one is the liquid deglosser. The foolproof way for me is I've got an oil-based finish like this. I know that this client's going back to a latex finish. Is to come through, sand this to make it nice and smooth, and now I'm going to come through, prime it with my fast dry oil primer, and then I'm going to come through and put my paint coating on top of it. And it really doesn't matter at that point what my paint coating is. I've got a good solid substrate. This one with the latex, I'm still going to prime it with an oil base because that to me is good insurance. I want to make sure that my two top coats are going to hang in there and I don't have to recoat this. God knows it's a pain in the butt to paint a door, and I don't want to paint that door again and again because maybe I didn't top coat it well enough, or I didn't prime it well enough, or I didn't do anything. It's like I sanded it nicely. Still don't trust my sanding. I'm going to use the oil-based primer as my insurance policy to make sure that I really have sanded this well and prepped it well. That to me is the best way that you can deal with painting latex over oil. Now, latex and oil each other, right? Remember we talked about it. It's like just on the same note, but slightly different. If you want to paint, if I've got a latex door and I want to paint oil over top of it, the same thing basically applies. I'll be in better shape. It's not as slippery or smooth as the oil-based is, but I can come through and I can just prime this with an oil base, and then I can put whatever I want on top of it. That's why for me, it's just so much easier to use an oil-based primer on top of previously painted surfaces, any kind of woodwork, right? So if you've got stuff that's baseboards, molding, woodwork, wainscoting, windows, doors, trim, casings, all that stuff, window sills, stools, anything like that, paint it, prime it with an oil-based primer, and then you can come back and paint with whatever you decide. You can change it up like that. So this is the part where we're going to take some questions. For those of you on YouTube, you can join in some of these questions. I've got a couple questions on here right now. First question, well, before I get into questions, I do need to mention our sponsor. This is always sponsored by Abitron. They sponsor these Window Wednesdays. They have for months. They're awesome. If you guys don't follow them, please go check them out at Abitron Inc. on Instagram. And you can see a lot of their videos. I put a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about how to use their products. They make great wood epoxies. I particularly use their wood restoration kits, which are the liquid wood and the wood epox. Those two together, whether it's in a kit or you buy them separately, they're incredible. They're very, very strong, very, very hardy, and they can be used to just, I could build a door out of it if I wanted to. It's very expensive, so I wouldn't build a door out of it. But it behaves just like wood, and that's the whole goal. I don't want to use Bondo or some random wood filler. I really want to use a wood epoxy if I'm going to repair rotted sections. And I can rebuild whole portions of these windows very, very easily using this product. It's great stuff. So on to the questions. I've got, just bought a house with original 100-year-old windows. Is it possible to add screens? It is 100% possible to add screens. It's not hard at all to add screens to your wood windows. It depends what kind of windows you have. If you've got double hung windows, the screens usually go on the outside. Or if you also have in-swing windows, in-swing casements, the screens go on the outside. If you've got out-swing casements, then those screens would go on the inside. I have a video on my YouTube that's called DIY Window Screens. If you want to go check that out, it'll show you all the supplies you need, walk you through the whole process of how we build screens, some good options for there. If you want to use, there's different options you can use for it. If you want to do mortise and tenon joinery, I use in that video a pocket hole jig, so I can use dowels. Lots of different options. You just pick what works best for you. That's in line with your woodworking skills, but it's not a terribly complicated process. I also have plans, if you want to download them, there you can find them in the description of that video. That'll basically you plug in your measurements and it'll show you what your cut list should be. Exactly, the rail, the style, wood screens, traditional style, and then you pick your screening. Fiberglass, charcoal, aluminum, bronze, if you want to be really, really fancy schmancy. There's a lot of good options out there. All right, let me see, another question I've got. Doing a varnished window on the interior, do I need to put varnish over the back bed of putty? Yes, I recommend, on the interior for your window, whether it's paint or varnish, I recommend running the paint to the glass. We just had this conversation a lot in my shop is, should I run the, let me clear some of these questions. And if you have any other questions, please mention them in the comments here, so I will definitely answer them for you. New Light Restoration, good to see you on there. But if you have the interior of your windows are refinished, whether it's varnish or paint, you want to run that paint to the glass. So usually if you have a back bed of putty, that's going to be around the 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch. 1/16 is better unless you've got some really uneven muttons and windows. In that case, you may have an 1/8 in places. But you want to run the varnish or the paint over that putty right to the glass. You don't need to lap it up the glass like you do on the outside. On the outside of your sash, you definitely want to lap that paint up onto the glass about a 1/16 or even an 1/8 of an inch. I wouldn't go any more than that because you don't want to have that on there. And you need to run that paint onto the glass. That seals the putty because you have a lot more putty on the outside and you have a lot more weather. So that seals the putty to the glass, keeps the water as it runs down going over the glass, out of there, and not getting back behind the paint and being trapped in the putty, which will really shorten the life of your putty. So run the paint over onto the glass, a 1/16 or an 1/8 on the outside. On the inside, just paint or varnish right to the glass. And some people, if you want to, one of the tricks you can do for your putty on varnished windows, because you'll see a little bit of that putty on the inside, is you can tint the putty. You can order it sometimes from Sarco tinted if you've got a big batch of it. Most of us, that's not the case. You just need a little bit of putty tinted. And in that case, I typically will mix a little bit of like Minwax stains, oil-based stains, because it's an oil-based putty. I use Sarco putties, so ours is the Austin's Glazer's putty. You can get that on our website at thecraftsmanstore.com. I love that because it's a mildew-resistant formulation they've put together. And I will mix it all up, and then I will add a drop by drop of Minwax stain into that. So if I've got, say, a red mahogany stained sash, or early American stained one, I'll add some of that same stain into my putty, and that way you don't see the putty, which is more of like a natural, like taupe-ish color. I just used taupe in a Window Wednesday video. But you can have that you can have that color match so it looks close to what you've got on your sash. Also, if you backbed your window, your sash is already finished and stained, before the putty has cured, you can put some more stain in there and keep tweaking it and trying to get the right color. So that's something that you can do. You always want to have your putty sealed. Never want to leave it open to the air, really. So sealing the putty really is imperative. I saw a couple other questions come in on Instagram. You guys are being quiet on YouTube, so I'll answer some of these questions here. Let's see, I see one, where'd it go? Can I use Abitron to fill some rotten sections in an 18th century ceiling beam? You absolutely can use Abitron for that, and that's what it would honestly be best for, is if you've got structural elements, right, wood filler is great for filling nail holes, works fine for that. But if you've got structural elements, we've used it to repair like whole beams holding up portions of the house. So you can absolutely take Abitron. What you do when you use it is you dig out any of the section that's like rotted, totally loose wood. Dig it out there. I prefer to treat that section of rot with boracare or some other borate preservative to kill the fungus. And then I'm going to come through and I'm going to brush a bunch of liquid wood onto the wood there, around the perimeter of it, let it soak into the wood. Until the wood stops drawing that liquid wood in, you just keep applying it. Once you've got enough of that and it leaves the surface kind of tacky, then you come in with your 2 parts of wood epoxy, you mix it together, and you pack it into that cavity wherever it's damaged. I always overfill it. Once it's overfilled, you're going to let it cure. Small repairs, it's a little weird with epoxy, but small repairs cure slowly, talking like 8 to 12 hours. Big repairs can cure like that. I've done some where you make like a ball of epoxy like this. That means I've probably got like an hour before it cures. The bigger the amount of epoxy that you use, the faster it cures because it generates its own heat. So if it's generating a bunch of heat, then you're going to run into an issue with it curing quickly. So if you do need to make a large batch for something like that ceiling beam, then I might make the large batch, but do it like spread it out a bit. Like if I got a ball this big, I'm going to break it into several like tennis ball size patches and then put them in each at a time right next to each other. It's best to patch it all as one big thing because you want that epoxy, the wood epoxy, like blending in with your liquid wood, and that's really the glue that holds it in there. So it's important to get the timing right. Put the liquid wood on, wait till it's tacky, surface on the wood till you've really saturated the wood, and then pack the wood epoxy in there really well, overfill it. Once it's cured, sand it smooth, prime it, paint it, you're done. It's a structural wood epoxy that I can use on corners of doors. Like I could come up here and just repair this corner here and not worry about it chipping off or something like that because the liquid wood glues that corner on there. That's what makes it such a good product for us on window restoration, those fine little areas on muttons and stuff that are so common to break off and drive me nuts. Let me see if I got any more questions on here on Instagram. I don't, but I am going to elaborate just a little bit more on some of the stuff we've been talking about on the paint. So a lot of people have been asking me about good paints for doors and windows too. I have my preferences on stuff, but let me tell you that the best paint you're going to use for a window or a door is to use something that is basically like an enamel paint. You need something that is going to really resist blocking. And what blocking is when you have, I've got a good example back here. I've got a latex door, right, and an oil door. The latex door, when you close it, you'll probably notice on this on your house if you've got a painted door, you'll notice like all around like the perimeter on a latex door, that there's probably going to be some paint from the jam on there. So if I've got a green door here and maybe I've got a white jam, I'll find white paint around here because it kind of like glues itself to another latex paint, and then when you open it, it's like it peels itself off. It's sticky. Oil-based paint, wonderful, does not have a blocking problem at all, really, once it's cured. If it's fresh, you got 8 hours before this thing's going to be done. So, but once it's cured, then you're not going to have that problem with oils. Oils are much more brittle paints, so they don't hold up as well outdoors with flexibility and things like that. But they're great for interior woodwork, things like that, where you want like a really hard finish. I like them for the interior of doors and windows, but sometimes here in Florida we have a lot of temperature swings, and it can get brittle and start chipping off, as opposed to a latex that can handle all that flexibility. So you got to figure out what you're going to do, where you're going to make the trade-off. But if you want to find, a good latex paint that is an enamel paint that really does not stick to other paints, Snap Dry is a good paint for that. It's not great for use on, it doesn't bond to glass well, so I don't like it for the exterior of windows. I do like it for doors because it's a latex, it dries very quickly. It's a very hard finish that's made by Sherwin-Williams. I'm testing a new paint right now. I'm going to have a project up soon using Pratt & Lambert Aqua Enamel, which is supposed to be really excellent about avoiding blocking. So that's something to check out too. But find a paint that's really designed as an enamel, or it's designed for windows or doors or woodworking or something that is meant to be a very hard paint. That's going to prevent you from having a lot of blocking around doors. And you can easily find that with things like Benmore's Impervo, their old oil-based paint. That's been a standard of mine for years, but it's an oil-based. If you want a latex, you want to avoid the VOCs, you want something a little bit more eco-friendly, easy to clean up with water, then you're really going to have a challenge finding something that doesn't have paint blocking. It's possible, but it's just a lot harder than using a typical oil-based paint that is going to really avoid those issues. I noticed that even just in sanding these two doors right here. This one, I mean, it's silky smooth. Nothing's going to stick to it. But this one, it was just gumming up the sandpaper. It was just a pain in the butt to sand latex compared to oil, and it's because of that same blocking thing. It's just tacky. It has that flexibility, which is wonderful, but that comes with the downside of being sticky to other things. So do look for a good enamel, something like that. I think you're going to be happier with that. I think I have another question that came in here. Let me see. Just bought a 1920s house with foggy aluminum windows. Oh no. I want to buy old windows to install. What should I look for when buying old wood windows? I'm a newbie. Awesome. Welcome, newbie. So what do you do if you've got an old house that's got basically replacement windows? If you've got fogged up windows, that's something we rail against here, is like replacement windows. They're called replacement windows because you have to constantly replace them. Not always a good solution. So I like to, believe it or not, I like to put in historic style windows. You don't have to buy a salvage window. You could if you want. But my company, Austin Historical, you can shoot us an email. We'll give you a quote if you'd like, info@austinhistorical.com. We build historic replica windows. So we will build you a new wood window, single pane. And people will be like, oh, the energy efficiency is like, yeah, but it's not going to fog up on you. You don't have to replace it every 15 or 20 years. And you can always put an exterior storm window on it. And the studies have shown that if you take a standard single pane window, wood window, and you put an exterior storm on it, that you will just about meet the same air infiltration and energy efficiency requirements that you would on a new double pane window. I know that it may sound crazy, but it does. You've still got double pane. If you've got a storm window, you've got 2 panes of glass. And actually you've got like 3 or 4 inches between them instead of a 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, or 3/4 of an inch in a double pane. And you don't ever have to worry about that seal failure, which is always going to happen in a double pane window. That is how they're designed. They fail, the seals fail. They are not meant to last forever. They have planned obsolescence in them. I'm not mad at them. I feel like it's a bad product. And so I won't sell that product and I won't work with that product. What I recommend, you reach out to us if you want. There are a bunch of other companies. You can go to windowpreservationalliance.org/directory. And that is the Window Preservation Alliance. I'm on the board of that. And they are a group where you'll find a directory of window restoration or window replica builders all across the country. Not everybody builds replacement windows. We do, and we'll ship throughout the country. So if that helps you want. But I won't lie to you, they're very expensive to build these. This is a custom window made by Craftsman, not by machines or anything like that. Yes, we use routers and shapers, but it doesn't just go into a CNC. It has to be custom made and they're handmade. So they're expensive, but they're heirloom quality. They're gonna last last 100+ years. And we build them out of wood that, make sure whatever you get, if it's from us or somebody else, you get something that is made from a very rot-resistant wood. We use a wood called Akoya. That is very, very rot-resistant, very stable, great for windows and doors, especially like these. We prefer to restore, but if they're missing, you're stuck with buying a replica. So you can build a whole jam, weather strip with spring bronze, the old ropes and pulleys, the whole shebang, everything you want to do. There are companies out there like mine. Whole Historical is another one that does it, that will build you new replica windows. So keep that in mind. That's an option for you. All right, y'all. This has been fun trying to do this on both Instagram and YouTube. Look at this. Somebody on YouTube jumping in with a question. Want to build my own historic style windows. Can I use, and it just disappeared for me. Come back. There it is. Should I use cedar? Tyler, cedar's a good wood. It's very light. I don't feel that and usually it's strong enough for those. Some of the ones that I would use, some of the recommended woods. Akoya is by far my favorite that I mentioned. Spanish cedar is a very good wood for building new wood windows or screens or storms. Another one is mahogany is a good wood for that. Sapelli is a good wood for that as well. It depends where you are in your location. So if you want to use old growth stuff like old growth pine or cypress, those are really excellent options. So that's something to think about. I would stay away from western red or eastern cedar, but I would definitely aim for like some of those other ones that I was just mentioning there. Where you can buy Akoya, if you're wondering, we will sell it and ship it to places, but there are a couple places like Rex Lumber, United Forestry Products, Hood Distribution. Those are some that I know in the Southeast. UFP, United Forestry Products, is pretty much everywhere. They're all across the country, so that's one place you can get it. But if you want to go, if you just Google Akoya distributors or sellers, you'll find a list on their website of where you can find where the nearest person is who distributes Akoya to you. And I had one more question come in on Instagram. It says, we have Newish fiberglass exterior doors, less than 2 years. Wow. We live at the beach. We painted our doors front and back, Sherwin-Williams high gloss latex. I believe that's what it's called. And they stick. Help. Yes, latex paint sticks. This is a challenge we were just talking about. So one fix that you can potentially do if you've got sticking doors and you're like, I don't want to redo all these, I don't want to repaint them, is you can come through and you can, I will go, say, right around the perimeter where it's sticking, sand it a little bit, touch up your paint, let it cure and dry, and then I've come through with just a little bit of wax. Even just candle wax works fine, but beeswax is great. Or you can come through with a little bit of Vaseline or petroleum jelly if you want to be generic, and just rub it right on those sections where it touches. You can put it onto the jamb if that's where it's touching, or put it a little bit on the door. I prefer the jamb, that way you don't see it so much, and that's a good way to stop some of that issue that you may be getting there. And I saw another question come through on YouTube. Is there a way to strip windows in place? You always have them off in your videos. I do have them off in my videos because it's easier to shoot a video to strip them, but you can do any of the stuff that I'm showing in my videos how to do in the shop. It's just easier because I have a work table. I prefer pulling the sash out for a good restoration in the shop, but you can absolutely strip them in place. So get a good scraper, use a heat gun. Hopefully, seems like next week we should have our next batch of IR paint strippers back in here, so we'll put them up for sale again. But you can just do all the stuff I'm doing on a table right on site with the window in place if you want. That's how I started. I started doing my own windows on my house right in place. I didn't know how to take them out. I learned slowly but surely that it's a lot easier if I take them out. But get a scraper, work on it in place, reglaze it in place, not a problem at all. You don't need to pull the windows out in order to work on them. Not a problem at all. So you're welcome, Christina. Thanks for coming and showing up at our first YouTube Window Wednesday Live. Excited to have you guys on YouTube and to see so many of you on YouTube and so many of you on Instagram. So I know I'm going back and forth between camera 1, camera 2, but I'm trying to figure out how to do this on both and stream to both of the same place. We don't have a high-tech setup. It's just a tripod and iPad, so we're doing what we can. But thanks for coming, y'all. One more shout out to our sponsor before I sign off here, Abitron. If you're on Instagram, give them a like at Abitron Inc. If you're on YouTube, I should know if they have a YouTube channel, but go check them out. Go Google them, go to their website and check out the stuff they've got, because they've got way more than just wood restoration products for windows, doors, things like that. They've got concrete, steel. You can restore just about anything with the stuff that they have. And I'm always enjoy seeing you guys. We're going to try this again next week. We're always here on Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern. Look forward to chatting with you guys again. So YouTube, till next time. Instagram, till next time.